Welcome to another episode of One on One with Mitch Lafon. Joining me this week, Steve Brown of Trickster. New album is Human Era. I must say, it's really, really good. If you haven't heard it, you should definitely check that out. And speaking of checking things out, you should check out all the work that my co-host has done. Adam Hamilton of, what do we say? Producer, LA Guns, CC DeVille's Experience. Where do we go with that?
Where do we go with that exactly? That's the question. Thanks for having me, Mitch. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure. And just a quick thing out in public. A few years ago, I did that Kiss tribute, A World with Heroes, and you helped me immensely on it. And I just wanted to make sure that everybody knows that I'm saying thank you publicly. So,
My pleasure, sir. It was an honor to help you. I love anytime you got anything, I'm a part of it.
Thank you. And thank you for being a part of this today. So,
thank you.
What are you doing these days? A lot of the fans that listen to this will know you from your time with LA Guns. Great time that was too. Walking the Dead, Tales from the Strip, great albums. Great albums.
Thank you. It was an awesome time being one of the many 50 or 60 bass players in LA Guns years.
Right. One of the 78 members.
It is a joke that I can definitely laugh at because it's hysterical. But man, it was some of the greatest times of my life for sure.
But Tales from the Strip, you have a song on there called Vampire.
Yeah.
That's as good a song as anything LA Guns has ever done.
Well, that was an amazing song that we had met up with a guy named John Nielsen, who's an incredible songwriter, and he had come on tour with us and was opening up for us. And LA Guns always reaches out to people when they do a record and says, "Hey, listen, we're getting ready to do an album. Want to collaborate with us?" And they're really open to that. They're really open to me writing with them. We asked John if he had anything, and John submitted that song to us, and we were just like, oh my God. I remember listening to it at my place where we were doing pre-production, and our jaws hit the floor, just listening to him singing on acoustic. And we're like, well, that's going on the record. So it was really that easy. We really didn't have to do too much to it, man. We just kind of gave the LA Gun spin, and, he basically wrote a tribute to the band, which was pretty cool. So yeah, I love that one too. That still today is one of my favorite songs. Absolutely.
It really is. Before we start listening to Steve Brown describe Human Era and what he's doing these days with Def Leppard, I do have to ask you about one more thing that you've done. You produced an album by the one, the only Captain Kirk, William Shatner, a Canadian,
yes, sir.
A wonderful Canadian. I believe even a Montrealer. Is he a Montrealer?
Yes, he is. Absolutely. He is absolutely.
Yeah, at the local university, McGill University, actually has a William Shatner building that they named for him back in the day when I was a student there. So,
well, they should. He is a legend and an icon, and an incredible guy, and a true gentleman. And it was talk about a surreal couple of months getting to know him, which was really cool because it's kind of rare when you work with somebody like that and then you become friends with them afterwards. But that was in 2011, and my wife and the little one, we still go watch Monday Night Football over there with him and his family now, so it's pretty cool. He's just a really rad guy. And
wow.
If you go on YouTube and you click Adam Hamilton William Shatner, you can see some funny stuff. I mean, he really gets the joke. He gets that it's comedy. He gets that it's hysterical. He gets that it's surreal and strange and weird and wonderful. It's just one of those things that he loves to be creative. He doesn't care what it is. He just says yes to anything creative, and that's what's so cool about it.
And it's just funny, especially, some of the songs that they chose for him to do, Rocket Man, Walking on the Moon,
yeah.
Major Tom, Planet Earth.
Yep.
I mean,
yep, there is no mystery to what this was. This was definitely a concept album about space. And, he literally wrote the whole story, and he picked all these songs with Brian Pereira from Cleopatra Records.
Yeah.
And he goes, and then I want it to go into this song, and it'll tell this scene of the guy's life, and then I want it to go into this scene, and I literally have a whole script he wrote out of lyrics. He's just a real creative, fun guy. It was go on there and look up William Shatner Iron Man, and there's some funny footage of us trying to get him to sing Ozzy's part in Iron Man. It's pretty crazy.
when you did the album, you had a lot of guest musicians, Zach Wild,
Yep.
Mike Inez, Richie Blackmore, Peter Friend. Did those
Oh
guys
yeah.
come into the studio and work with you, or did they sort of just send in their parts
It just
via?
it just depends. The Deep Purple guys were obviously in England, so we had to have them. I would have to talk to them via email or call them and ask them what I wanted to. They would say, "What do you want us to do?" Which was cool because we also got Richie Blackmore to plug in and play through his Marshall on it, which was really great. He wanted to do like his mandolin and acoustic stuff, and we said, "No, if you're going to play on this, you got to play your electric guitar," and he did. So we got him to do that. He didn't come in, but a few of my buddies that we were here in LA, like Mike Inez and people like that were awesome. Nick from the Strokes, they all came in my studio here. We live out near Woodland Hills. They all came in and did it here. So we just kind of, Zach wanted us to actually come up to Santa Clarita to where he lives and do it in his studio. So me and Bill and a couple of people all got in a car and went up there and hung out with Zach the whole day because he wanted to hang out with Shatner. And that was a story in itself, getting to sit around listening to them hang out for like 8 hours while he tracked guitars. That was pretty funny.
Oh, I've had a chance to be around Zach, and I know his personality a bit. I can just imagine the personality of William Shatner and Zach together in a room. That's got to be.
I mean, it was all I can say is the only word that comes to mind is it was fascinating because you've got two guys that are brilliant and they're both hysterically funny and they're both can talk about anything, any topic you can imagine. And just hearing the banter back and forth with them for almost 8 hours while Zach moved around and tried to figure out, what he's going to play on it. I was like a fly on the wall. They would ask me a question. I'd be like, what? It was fascinating. We got a lot of it on film, so it's pretty fun.
That's got to be released at some point. In your time in LA Guns, did you not any chance, but did you tour or play shows with Trickster?
Nope, never did. It's funny. They were one of the bands that we just never crossed paths with,
Wow.
and we crossed paths with a lot of people. So I can honestly say I've never met those guys before.
Well, there you go. So let's listen to Steve Brown right now, and then we'll come back and we'll hear a little bit about the CC DeVille Experiment because there's got to be
Lord.
a great story in there.
Yeah, let's hope nobody goes to jail telling it.
All right, here is Steve Brown of Trickster. We are talking with Steve Brown of Trickster. The new album is Human Era. Good day, Steve.
How you doing, Mitch? Great to talk to you.
Yeah, great to talk to you. It's been a while. The last time I think we spoke probably 10 years ago when you were doing the 40-foot Ringo stuff. Underrated band. I loved it.
I agree with you, man. If I had $1 for every person over the last, 15 years or so, I'd said, 40-foot Ringo, you guys should have been huge. What happened? I'd be like, I guess I would have been a millionaire. But, it was one of those things. It was an incredible band. We came real close and we were able to make some incredible music and play some really great shows. So we're blessed with that.
Yeah, and I guess I would have been a millionaire. It's a good song title, so write that down.
You're right, man.
Now let's talk Trickster, Human Era, the new album. Boy, I don't want to say I'm surprised, but I got it, and bloody hell, it is probably your best album ever. It is fantastic.
I agree with you.
And I don't want to mean to disparage the other stuff, but I put it on and I went, wow.
Well, it's a testament to, the guys and myself and, the fact that we've stayed together. We took a little vacation through the mid 90s and early 2000s. And when we got back together, there was a really, you kind of relive those moments in the past where you go, man, I really love this. And as years since 2008, when we reformed, every year the band has been getting tighter and tighter. And I think, finally we're at a point where the band is playing better and getting along better. Not like we ever had problems in the past, but it's just really a great time for us. And I think that really shows in the music and, of course, on the record, Human Era. I couldn't be happier with it. And it really shows Trickster firing, on all cylinders and, giving 200%.
What precipitated the reunion in 2008? Because listen, everybody said rock is dead, melodic rock is dead, bands like Trickster don't belong. And yet, here you are 7 years later, firing on full cylinders. Was it a risky chance to take? Was it sort of like, okay, let's just do it one more time and part on good terms? Or what made you think, yeah, let's do this?
Well, I think, it was always back when we kind of put the band on hiatus back in 1995, 96. It was always a question. We knew we would always get back together. I mean, we're
Okay.
first and foremost, like, of course, with the new album Human Era, we're going back to the time of when we started the band. Trickster's, I think, a little bit different than a lot of rock bands in the sense that we're more like brothers. We've known each other for more than 30 years. 35. I've known Gus, Mark, and Pete since I was 9 years old. It's there's a real family vibe to this band. So
Right.
there was never a question that we weren't going to get back together. And when we did get back together, yeah, there was some of us in the band who were like, let's take this slow and let's see what happens. Of course, I'm never like that. I'm always like, dive right in. Let's go.
Right.
Let's book a world tour. Let's do this. Let's take over the world again. But we wound up doing 3 or 4 shows in 2008, and then every year after that, it got to be more and more. And then in 2012, we put out our first new album of original
Right.
material in a long
New
time,
Audio Machine.
which was an incredible record, I thought. And really, after a band that we haven't made an original record since 1992 when we made Here,
Yep.
to come back with New Audio Machine, it was pretty incredible for all of us, and the response that we got from our fans and from the friends and from critics, it was overwhelming. And then, it gave us a newfound confidence that we can do this and we can do it better than we did it in the past. Because back in the old days, though I was always involved, of course, writing the material, the production end of it, the records never sounded the way I wanted them to sound. And I could never convey that until I was able to build my own studio and become
Right.
an engineer, producer, writer, and do, kind of one-stop shopping, be a mini Mutt Lange, if you will, be a mini Bob Rock.
Yeah, and I want to talk to you about Mojo Vegas, your studio, in a second. It was part of the problem back then with the bad sound was that you were on MCA Records, and they just didn't know what to do with rock bands. They just sort of said, "Let's sign them because it's popular, and then we don't have a plan." I mean, that was MCA Records pretty much.
A little bit, but honestly, no, that wasn't the case. And
Okay.
I got to be honest with you, MCA was great to us, as were the people at Mechanic Records.
Okay.
Steve Sinclair, who signed us back in the day. They were great. Trickster's biggest problem back in the day was, first and foremost, when our record hit. We had a #1 video on MTV back in October of 1990 with "Give It to Me Good." The distribution was changing from MCA. They were changing from uni distribution to Universal. So that is probably the worst curse any band can have, when a major record label is changing distribution. So the long and short of it was, I'll never forget it, PJ and I think Pete and all of us, we were in Ohio when our video went #1, and we were in a mall. And there, back in 1990, any mall in America that you would go to, there were 4 or 5, 3 or 4 at best, different record stores in any given mall. There was a Sam Goody, there was Coconuts, whatever. There were so many different record stores.
Raspberries, Towers. I mean, they were all there.
We went into every record store in the mall, and only one of them had our record or our tape or CD at the time. And this was a band that had a #1 video on MTV, a top 20, top 30 album. It was insane, and we were freaking out. And it was a process. It was a learning curve, for us, to where, unfortunately, we got shafted. And yeah, I remember our manager years ago had a meeting with John Kolodner at Geffen, and he said, if Trickster was on Geffen Records, you would have sold 3 million records. But listen, we can never go back and change things. We're grateful that everything that happened to us, but yeah, that was part of the problem. And also, there were people at MCA and Mechanic who wanted us to sound like a garage band. They didn't want us to sound like Def Leppard or Mötley Crüe, as polished. And there was a beauty to that, you know, to where we had a different thing going. And for certain songs like Give It To Me Good, I think that kind of garagey, you know, open sound worked. But for the more polished stuff like One in a Million and Surrender, I think our career would have been a little bit more successful had we had a more polished sound like Firehouse had or like Winger had. So, you know, there's all the woulda, coulda, shoulda, but you know what? We're still here. We have fans all over the world that love us. We still get to go out and play these great festivals and gigs all around the country.
Absolutely.
So, you know what? We can't complain.
Now,
we're lucky.
Let's go back to 1992. The Here album comes out. You head on the road on the Kiss Revenge tour. You, Faster Pussycat, Kiss. The tour musically for Kiss, fantastic. Ticket-wise, undersold a bit, but just talk to me about being on the road with Kiss. I mean, this is not any old band. It's Kiss.
Yeah, I mean, it's for me, it was huge because it was, you know, Kiss was the band that made me want to do this and become a musician and become a rock star. You know, 1978, Kiss and Van Halen were the two bands that changed my life forever. So to finally get the opportunity to tour with them was kind of, you know, it was another one of those moments, you know, one of those top of the mountain. And I'll never forget it. We were making the Here record, and we just got to LA because at that time when we were doing Here, we just renegotiated our deal with MCA Records. We were living the rock star life. We just signed a huge deal and we were spending a ton of money. We were living the life and it was awesome, and I wouldn't change it for the world because we were working in the best studios in New York and Philly. We worked at Cajun in Philly where Cinderella and Queensryche did, you know, their latest records. And we were working in New York City at Right Track, these incredible, you know, $1,500, $2,000 a day studios. I mean, it was stupid, but it was for the times. You know, we got to make one of those big budget rock records. So then, of course, we couldn't just leave it at staying in New York. We had to come to Hollywood, out and finish the record. And we were living, you know, at the Les Defay Suites Hotel right off Sunset. We all had rented Mustangs. And I'll never forget, PJ and I were sitting in my suite at this hotel, and we cooked dinner, which was funny because, you know, it was ironic. We could have got room service, but I decided to cook PJ and I spaghetti dinner. And our manager called. He said, "Man, I just want to give you guys the news. You got the Kiss tour." And it was like, yeah. And we went out that night to the Rainbow and, you know, partied our balls off, and it was just an amazing time. And then, you know, leading up to it, we finished the record, and we were so proud of the Here record. And the people at MCA, we played it for them, and they were like, "Oh, this is going to be huge. We're going to do this. We're going to do that." And, you know, lo and behold, we get out on the Kiss tour, and, you know, we make this great video for Road of 1,000 Dreams, and spend a lot of money on a video. And we get out on the tour, and, you know, all of a sudden, we're calling our manager. How come MTV is not playing our video? And it was like, guys, I got good news and bad news. And so that was it. And, but getting back to the tour, we had a blast, and it was, you know, to be with Gene and Paul and Eric and Bruce. It was incredible. And they treated us fantastic, and a lot of funny moments, of course, with Gene Simmons, because he's a great guy. You know, sometimes he gets a bad rap for his attitude, but anybody who really knows Gene knows that most of the things he says, you know, it's very tongue-in-cheek, and his whole bravado is very much a facade, because he's really, you know, he's treated me always fantastic, and we get along great. And I spent time with him last summer when I was out on tour with Def Leppard on the Kiss tour.
Yeah.
And Paul and I, we had nothing but laughs, and it's really great after all these years. as Gene said, he's 65 years old. He still gets to do this. Those guys really appreciate it as we do. So there's a common bond there and a friendship and, memories that we'll always forget. The good times and bad times of the the Revenge tour. There was a lot of great times on that tour, and it was a lot of fun.
You mentioned Def Leppard. I'll get to that in a second. You also mentioned Firehouse. One of your sort of, I don't want to say most famous, but one of the better tours was the 1991 Warrant Firehouse Trickster tour. Any memories of that one?
Oh my God, that was the one tour where Trickster really learned how to party, and the Warrant guys definitely were, they were raised and grew up modeling themselves after Mötley Crüe and Poison, and they definitely took it to a new level, and they definitely taught these young boys from New Jersey how to drink. And it was just the one thing I could say about that tour was it was like a tailgate party that never ended for 4 months. We basically went from city to city, and the camaraderie between all the bands. We were kind of like brothers. We were all like brothers and cousins and like a family. And we immediately hit it off with the Warrant guys. It was like they were like they were like 4 years, 5 years older than us. And we just immediately clicked with them. And Firehouse, that was their first real tour. So they were very green at that point, and they didn't know how to navigate their way through certain aspects of touring. And, I know the Trickster guys, we took them under our wing, and we just had a blast. And it was, like I said, it was like that between the bands, the crews. We were all kind of relatively the same age, so it was very it was very cool. A little bit different than touring with like the Scorpions, who were a lot older than us. Right. Though that was spectacular, because the Scorpions tour was our first. That was our first shot all around kind of America and Canada, doing all the arenas, the Enormo Dome, sold out nights. That was mind blowing. And we were number one, on MTV. So we meant something to that tour. But the Warrant Trickster Firehouse tour was definitely one for the record books as far as, the partying and just great, great times. And what was really cool about that tour was promoters, the business itself. No one thought that tour was going to be as successful as it was, and it turned out to be one of the top 10, I think, grossing Polestar tours of that year. And it's one of those underdog things, and it just took on a life of its own, and it was incredible, man. And people still to this day always talk about it.
Yeah, the Blood, Sweat, and Beers tour. Now, that in 2016, it'll be 25 years since that tour. Might be time to head out on the road next year for a 25th anniversary. Well, would you still call it Blood, Sweat, and Beers? Maybe it would be something else by then.
Now
that we're all older, what would it be called at this point?
Well, I think because Eric Turner's such a he's a wine winemaker and stuff. Right. So I think either Blood, Sweat, and Cabernet or the Blood, Sweat, and Wine tour. We're all a little bit older now, so our tastes are different. Instead of doing shots of what the hell, Jose Cuervo we used to drink by the gallons back in the day. Now we're drinking wine and fine liquor, if you will. We're a lot more distinguished. At least I like to think that. But we'll have to look into that. We did,
that would be a great tour, by the way. If you could pull it off, I would certainly buy a ticket for that. That would be fantastic. Those three bands together, still doing it?
Well,
easy.
And all three bands, we just played with Firehouse a couple weeks ago, with Firehouse and Dokken in Dayton, Ohio, and Firehouse and us, we're still kicking ass. So, when we've played, the three of us, we've done gigs together, and it still is, all the bands still are as good as they used to be.
No, they really are. I just saw Firehouse on the weekend. I was out there with Bill Leverty and stuff. They were great out in, where was it? Mattawa, Ontario. Mojo Vegas Recordings, your studio.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me a little bit about it. Can anybody sort of call up and book some time? What's the whole story behind it? You've
You
done
know,
some of
this
the
is what I
Trickster.
this is what I this is what I do, you know, and getting back to, you know, being a musician, and as we all know, you know, you have to do a bunch of different things. So I still give guitar lessons, I give vocal lessons, I produce any kind of band, whether it's big, small, in between, mixing. So yeah, it's always available, you know, and just hit me up with an email. Anybody that's interested, you know, if you have the money, you know, to do it, we it's what I do and what I love, you know.
Yeah.
As much as I love performing live, I love being in the studio, and I'm working every day. Right now we're in the process. PJ Farley's working on his first ever solo album, solo CD. So I'm producing some of that right now. So I'm working on some of his tracks at the moment, as you know, some other artists. And you know, I do a lot of TV work for Eric and Jerry for their Down Boys music, their music library for the TV shows, the Wahlburgers, Duck Dynasty. So I've been doing very well with that, and it's, you know, it's another part of being, you know, a self-employed musician.
Yeah, so I mean, I encourage everybody to head over to mojovegas.com and check that out. And then we'll head over also to stevebrownmusic.biz. You've got this one-man band show where you perform songs by U2, Beatles, Bon Jovi, everybody. Tell me a little bit about that one-man band thing. That seems well, it seems fantastic, quite frankly.
Well, you know, it was one of those things I had to do, you know, out of necessity years ago, to where, you know, playing in bands is sometimes expensive for people. So there were people who always wanted to book me acoustically, but they would always say, "Hey, can you bring your electric so you can play Eruption?" Because that was always, you know, the Van Halen, you know, my Van Halen chops, and being in a sometimes Van Halen tribute band. People always love that, and so it got me thinking. I'm like, well, what if I make tracks in my studio and I'm able to kind of take the solo acoustic thing, but I used to use this little mini disc recorder, and I used to make these backing. Seen, you know, guitar players like Satriani, or guys who play at the NAMM show, you know, where they would play along with backing tracks. Well, what I did is go, well, why can't I play Hotel California with a backing track? Or why can't I play, you know, Ain't Talking About Love and Home Sweet Home, or Talk Dirty to Me? And it wound up in the northern New Jersey area. It wound up for years becoming this cool thing because no one else was doing it. So while people were doing solo acoustic shows, which I still do a ton of, sitting on a stool, you know, playing Brown Eyed Girl, I was playing my guitar with my pedal board with kick-ass, you know, drum and bass tracks, playing, you know, Van Halen songs, playing Lowrider, you know, kind of like the Gary Hoey version, and playing Stevie Ray Vaughan and Jimi Hendrix, and, you know, everything in between. And it wound up being, you know, a very cool thing. And you know, I'm actually made a lot of money doing it, and still do it once in a while.
Yeah, you see, listen to that. We just mentioned Mojo Vegas, and that you can hear the phone ringing in the back. People are getting in on it right away.
That's right. I think that's Mark Gus Scott trying to book me for a party right now.
There you go. You know, the Trickster albums Alive in Japan, Best of Trickster and stuff came out on the Mojo Vegas label. Are they still available? Can you still go to the site and buy those CDs, or are they sort of hard to find now?
Yeah, they're kind of, I mean, the Live in Japan, I think, is definitely out of print. It's available on iTunes, you know, digital download. I think the best of I just kind of do myself. It's, you know, like some of the other things, like the DVDs that we have out, I actually burn those in my studio, and I handwrite on the CDs, you know, or the DVDs myself. And it's kind of, you know, it's a very cool thing. I know fans send me emails and messages all the time. They're like, "Dude, this is the coolest thing. You know, you write on the CD with your hand, you know, and I sign it and number it." So it's kind of a special thing. I know when I was a kid, if I ordered something from the Van Halen fan club and Eddie Van Halen, signed the CD or whatever, I'd be freaking out. So it's kind of an extra special thing. But yeah, some of that stuff is still available.
Oh, fantastic. Well, whatever's available, just, pack it up, send it to me, send me a PayPal invoice. We're in business. I'll buy them all.
Excellent.
Truly, actually. And I mean that. We'll talk off air, but Def Leppard. Let's get to that. That's the big one. Last year, Def Leppard's out on tour with Kiss and the Dead Daisies. And you're at every show sort of hanging out in the wings as a just in case. And I'm trying not to be insensitive about the whole thing, but it's got to be very bittersweet for you. You've got this. You're playing with Def Leppard, for crying out loud, but the circumstances. Talk to me a little bit about the whole Def Leppard thing, what it's like to play with them, and what can you say?
Well, it's, of course, yeah, it's very bittersweet. My friend Vivian Campbell, he's dealing with some serious health issues, and, and of course we all have our best interest with him and him getting well, and he's doing great right now.
Yep. And I'll just say, my sympathies go out to Vivian, to his entire entourage, Def Leppard. I mean, it is just horrible, but I'm glad to see that he's still there and still, because he's
Vivian is a strong man. He's a fighter. He's a great guy, a phenomenal. He's one of my heroes as a kid. Like I told him, many times. I'm like, man, dude, I used to see you. I saw you when I was 14 years old with Dio, and now here I am. And him and I sitting backstage going over guitar parts and vocal parts. So, but. Yeah, it's definitely a bittersweet thing. But with that being said, we all know the show must go on. And getting back to it, Def Leppard, those guys have been friends of mine for the better part of 27 years since the Hysteria tour. Phil Collin is one of my best friends and like a brother to me. And so when this all went down back in 2013, when Viv was first diagnosed, Phil called me, and he just said, you're the only person we called, and this is what you need to do. And most people don't know this, and I think I've talked about it before. The reason I got the gig is kind of guitar playing is secondary. It's the vocals, and years ago, I think, I don't know what year it was, maybe 2010 or 2011, Phil and I did this Fox News show, the Mike Huckabee show on Fox News. And that was the first time Phil and I ever played together, publicly. We've jammed together and, sang and had fun and, traded licks for years. But that was the first time we ever played. And Phil was afterwards, he was like, he goes to me, I was amazed the blend of our vocal. And that was the seed that was planted to where he knew we would do something at some point, not knowing, of course, under the sad situation that, it would be with Def Leppard, but he knew as soon as it was known that they were going to have to get somebody, Phil and Malvin, their tour manager, were like, we got the guy. And, and though I've known Joe and Sav and Rick and Viv for, a long, long time, they didn't know me that well. Joe knew about 40 Foot Ringo. 40 Foot Ringo was actually going to go out on tour with Def Leppard, I believe I'm trying to think what tour it was, 2002, I believe.
That 2002, I think that's when they put out the Rock of Ages best of. So it must have been a sort of a greatest hits tour.
Something like that. Yeah. They, Joe loved the record. And Phil, they tried to work it out, but we couldn't. So he knew about me to some degree, but didn't know all the particulars. And so long and short of it, 2013, I knew all the stuff already, from seeing them. I know the gig so well because I've seen them on every tour multiple times since Hysteria. And it was a very very easy thing. And though 2013 they didn't need me, Viv did great with his treatments and everything. So then 2014, last year on the Kiss tour, they finally called me. Viv told management, bring Steve out, because they had the Wembley show in September of 2014, and then these other Vegas and California shows in October, November of last year. So it was inevitable that I was going to get to play. So they brought me out on tour last year to do sound checks and rehearse and really get everything tightened up, get my in-ear mix. And what can I say? One of my favorite bands in the world, and to get to play with them was a dream come true. And they are, it was a very easy transition, though there were some, certain things to overcome. It was a very natural thing. And, there was really no rehearsals for any of the gigs that I did with him. Phil and I did a brief rehearsal, just going over some vocal parts and some guitar stuff before Wembley. And it was just off to the races. They knew that I knew this gig and I knew the role to play. It wasn't me being the Steve Brown and Trickster, doing the whole, Pete Townsend, Eddie Van Halen jumps and running all over the stage. It was a different approach, and they knew that I'd be able to do that. And it's very easy, and I'm always there for them whenever they need me.
Yeah, and circumstances aside, I've seen some of the videos. I haven't seen a show with you, but you're sounding great. I mean, the band sounds great, and Def Leppard, one of my all-time favorites. And just to correct, 2002 was their X tour, the 10 tour, whatever you want to call it.
Okay.
Steve, always a pleasure to talk to you. And Human Era by Trickster, great new album. Man, makes me. I'm looking forward to the next one, and the next one, and the next one after that.
Yeah, man. Without question, we got a lot of tricks up our sleeve. No pun intended. But we're just looking forward to keeping making great music for the fans, and we just love what we do. And like I said before, the band is kicking ass, and we're just, as always, we're having just a great time. And I think that translates into everything that we do.
Yeah, and the music also conveys that. It's just fun. Sort of summertime, top-down kind of music, and there's not enough of that left in the world. And more power to you. Keep going.
That's it, and that's the most important thing. That what we try to do is we don't try to be anything but the best Trickster that we can be. We're not trying to reinvent the wheel. Kind of like AC/DC, we go out there and just do what we do, and and just give them classic, melodic, hard rock Trickster style. For better or worse, take it or leave it, that's what you're getting.
Fantastic. Steve, always a pleasure.
Thanks so much, Mitch.
Thank you, and we'll talk again soon.
You bet.
Bye-bye now. There you have it, folks. My interview with Steve Brown of Trickster. The new album is Human Era. Adam Hamilton joining me as my co-host. Adam, we spoke about William Shatner. We spoke a little bit about LA Guns. We need to talk a little more about your producing, but before we go anywhere, CC DeVille, the CC DeVille Experiment. Now, this is before Samantha 7.
Way before Samantha 7, yep. This was actually, I met CC when he was still in Poison. They were on the Flesh and Blood tour, so they were pretty much at the height of their fame and popularity. And met him down in Austin, Texas. He wandered in a bar that my band was playing at the time, and the cool old story happens. I got discovered by somebody who was a well-known musician, and he and I became friends, and he saw me play that night, got up on stage with us and jammed, and he invited me to the concert. He sat me on the tour bus after the show the next night, and He said, "Hey, listen, I'm really unhappy in Poison. I'm getting ready to quit. I'm going to start a band. I want you to be my drummer." And that's what I was always a drummer. I played bass in LA Guns just because I got bored of the drums and needed to do something different and kind of fresh.
Right.
But I was a drummer starting, since I was 4 years old. And so he said, "I'm going to call you." I didn't hear from him for like a year. I kind of looked forward to hearing from him and never did. So I kind of blew it off and said, well, okay, that was a fun night. That was a fun experience. And just kind of wrote it off as that. And then I watched him play at the MTV award show, and CeCe had giant pink hair at the time. And to be quite honestly, he looked a little frazzled and frayed and looked like he was kind of on a different plane than the rest of the band, shall we say. And the performance was a little bit of a it was a little loose, shall we say, as well. And I was a little concerned for him. And lo and behold, I got a call from him 2 nights later saying, I just quit the band. And I'm like, well, I just saw you play on TV. It looked like you were quitting the band during that performance. And we kind of had a laugh about it. He said, I'm going to fly out to L.A. He flew me out. And I stayed out here for about 3 months. And, we tried really hard to put a band together, a solo band. And he had a singer named Joey C. Jones from Dallas.
Yep.
And a bass player named Chris Torok, who was from a band called Liquor Sweet out here. And it was one of the many incarnations of bands he tried to put together through the years before Samantha 7 to try to do a solo thing. But, it was an incredible 3-month period of time where we literally jammed all night. People came up to the house, everybody, the Mötley Crüe guys, Sam Kinison when he was alive, and on and on and on. And we just partied and hung out and jammed and, got pictures in all the magazines and never really got anything else done because he was just in party mode. He had gotten out of Poison and he was just kind of, I don't know. He wasn't in a place to really knuckle down and do something serious. And we were all partying like you do back in the day. And it was an awesome, surreal, incredible, fun time. The room I slept in there had all the Poison gear from all the years. It was just like, wow. If you were a Poison fan, you were just like in heaven. It was crazy. But he had the Rockstar Mansion on the hill, like he talked about, in the Poison Behind the Music. I lived in that place, and it was crazy. I remember I would sit outside some days, and Burt Reynolds, who lived next door, he would kind of like be hanging outside with his kid while he's playing, and he'd say, "Hey, is everything okay over there?" I'd say, "Yeah, sorry, I hope we're not bothering you." But it was like total Rockstar decadent Hollywood Hills craziness. Those days really don't exist anymore, but it was crazy. Nothing really happened. After 3 months, I had to get out. I had to come home in Louisiana and kind of recalibrate because I was starting to kind of slip into the craziness too, and I needed to kind of get back to my roots and realize that that's a lifestyle that could, it's a slippery slope when you're going like that. So
yeah, 100 miles an hour. God.
Yeah, and I love CC, and thank God he pulled out of it, and he's been sober 10 years now, and got a 7-year-old little man who is just awesome. He's this little CC mini-me, and he's doing incredible, man. Just completely turned his life around, and I always tell him that. I said, man, you're the guy that got me started. You're the guy that got me to LA and discovered me, and I wouldn't be here without him.
Wow, that's great. Is he still jogging crazy amounts of miles? 'Cause I was at a few Poison shows back in the day, and he would get up at not get up, but get out of the bus at 2 PM and go jogging for like 8 miles. And you go, Jesus Christ, you're playing a show in like 3 hours. What are you doing?
I know. Well, that's the thing about us dudes in recovery is sometimes we just kind of we got to find something healthy to take all our craziness and put it into. Yeah. So that's all I could think it is.
Well, let's hope that in 2016 or 2017 the band gets back together and does a proper tour because, like it or not, those four together, they make magic. People will criticize, oh, it's just hair metal. No, it's fun, and those four together make it really, really fun. It doesn't work without anybody else. So
it's awesome. Yeah, there is an undeniable chemistry. Absolutely.
Any CC DeVille Experiment demos? Was there an album made? Was anything done, or was it just pretty much hanging out and waving to Burt Reynolds?
Yeah, unfortunately, literally we had all the gear set up in one of the rooms in his mansion up in the hills, and we jammed. We never even got to the point of miking any instruments up and doing demos. It was just sleep all day, get up and jam all night, and people would come in and hang out, and we'd jam some of the song ideas we had for them. But it was just so much partying going on that we just never got to that point, just never got to that point. And I think part of the reason was it was so overwhelming for the other three guys of us to be there with him because we were like, oh my God, this is our big break. This is it. We've hit the big time. We're playing with CC and he's, living in the big mansion up on the hill. So we were all just kind of wide-eyed and overwhelmed with it all, and just trying to keep up with him is a feat in itself.
That's awesome.
So we were just trying to keep up with him and stay alive. That's all we could really do.
It's just awesome to think that you've had a chance to hang out with two of the greatest American icons, William Shatner and Captain Kirk and Burt Reynolds.
Yep, I'll tell you what, man. It's definitely a bucket list seeing those two guys. Absolutely.
Any last words on your time with LA Guns? Did you ever mention why you left the band, or was it sort of like, it was time?
Yeah, I think it was a combination of a few things. I think I had just kind of, it had just kind of run its course. It was just time. I had gotten sober. Being sober on a tour bus for 3 months at a time is really challenging for me.
Yep.
And, I got married, wanted to have a family. I was kind of, it was just a lot of things. And I just started doing a lot more producing. I started to enjoy being home more and spending time in the studio. And it was just kind of the road was kind of coming to a fork, and I just decided it was time, and they gave me their blessing, and I just went my way, and there you go.
Yeah, and you've done a lot of movie stuff. You've had music in, like you said, Duck Dynasty. You mentioned that before. Wahlberger, Gene Simmons' Family Jewels, The Osbournes.
Oh, yeah.
America's Got Talent. What did you do for America's Got Talent?
They licensed lots of stuff for me, and I've got a library of like 400 songs that I've done over the last 20 years. So a lot of things they'll ask for specific songs for specific scenes.
Right.
And sometimes they'll just pick from the catalog and say, hey, we're going to license these songs from you. But yeah, I mean, it's been incredible. That's one of the things about moving to Hollywood that I just don't think I would have been able to tap into that had I not been out here in the right place at the right time and been able to do stuff for motion pictures and TV and commercials and stuff like that. That's kind of been my day job. I always joke, and being on tour on the road made it difficult to do that because, when you get a call for a song for a movie and you're, in Council Bluffs, Iowa, it's like, well, I can't really do anything for you right now. And it got to the point where it got really frustrating, and I had to pass up some big opportunities. So I just knew that I'd gotten a chance to go on tour, make albums and do that, but I really wanted to focus on the other side of it. And it was just time to focus on that.
Yeah, I'll ask you this. A lot of, teenagers will say, I'm going to be a famous rock star and tour the world, and I'm going to have all this money. As a producer doing these TV shows, I mean, you can make a decent living, right? This is not, you're not living paycheck to paycheck kind of thing. It's a good other way into the music
here's
business.
What I will say. I'll say this right now. 20 years ago, people were getting they were getting fair deals for the music you created.
Right.
Nowadays, because the internet's changed everything. We all know the obvious things that it's changed. We all know that streaming and downloads have killed the music business.
Right.
The music's been devalued. It's changed everything. But see, the problem is the corporations, who own everything, they don't even treat you as a creator of music anymore. You are a creator of content. They don't even consider it art or music. They don't consider it has value. They just think of it as content, something to fill in the spaces and the backgrounds and stuff. So, listen, I never thought I would say this, but, I would never want to deter anybody from their dream, but go to college and get an education, because it's tough to make a living as a creator of music nowadays, because, nobody wants to pay you for your hard work and your time and the music you create. It's not even considered music. It's just, it's content, Yep. It's changed a lot in 20 years. So listen, if I had gone to college and been able to get a degree and everything, I would probably be, in a better place now, but it's still a struggle. You really have to work hard and have to try to figure out different ways to reinvent yourself. That's why there's so many different pieces of the puzzle that you have to, try to put together.
It's funny that you mentioned the content thing, because probably like about 10 years ago, I stopped being a writer and a interviewer. People that would pay me started referring to me as a content provider. And I was like, that sounds like a nice title. Yeah. But then you realize it's not really a nice title. It sort of means, you're the gum that, fills a hole on the boat and keeps it from sinking.
Listen, hey, that's exactly it. Well, then you can relate. It's just, I think the arts have just been devalued now, with all the gadgets and the internet and with all the distractions that we have. Music and art used to be something we loved, and was magic, and there was it was a pastime. Now it's just a background noise, that's in all our other things that we do in a day. So,
and it's funneled
it's
us
very sad, but true.
It funneled all of us down to one title. I mean, you were a musician, I was a writer, and this and that, and then it all funneled down to we're all just content providers.
Yeah.
We're all the same. We're no longer we're not distinct anymore, and
No.
it's weird that's happened. But hey, listen, content provider. Okay, I'll give you
Yep.
content. Whatever.
Yep. I guess they'll call it whatever they want to call it to try to cheapen it so they can pay less. That's really all it boils down to. They want to pay. They don't want to pay for it. Period. They don't want to pay for you to do the work.
Nope.
And if you don't do the work, somebody else will come over and do the work for you even cheaper than that. I'm like, cheaper than free? What are you going to do? Pay them? And that's what's happening. You've got these music sites now where literally they will say, you have to pay us to shop your music, and then you pay them hundreds of dollars, thousands of dollars, whatever it is,
Yep.
for them to quote unquote shop your music, put your music in TV, and then they never do anything with it. So congratulations, you've just undercut everybody who's creative.
Yep.
You've paid all this money out, and we all lose. So it's a mess. But you know what? It is what it is. So we just got to keep doing what we do and see what happens. Hope for the best.
Yeah, hope for the best. And speaking of the best, Human Error by Trickster, their new album is probably one of the best ones they've made. So good on them for that.
Yep.
Where can folks find you online if they need to hire for
They
music?
can find me on Facebook, Adam Hamilton, on Twitter, Adam Hamilton1. Hit me up. Let me know. Come over and record. I'm in LA. Got a studio here. Always love new up and coming artists. Just started working with a little band called Micah up in Santa Clarita, not far from me here.
Yep.
They're incredible. We did their single here, and they got a Billboard number 6 single a couple of months back. And they're not even barely out of high school, so they're awesome. I want to shout out to them. So
very cool.
No label, no nothing. So they're just little awesome band, little hustlers. Look out for them. They're great. But yeah, always looking to work with new people. So hit me up.
There you go. And folks can find me at Mitch Lafon on Twitter, and of course the one-on-one Facebook page. Adam, always a pleasure.
Oh man, Mitch, this back at you, man. Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. We definitely need to do another one.
Let's do it. I love it. It was so much fun.
Thank you. Great. Talk to you soon.
Okay, man.